Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are now live.
Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and call our meeting to order. Councillors, thank you. We start off Harbour East tonight. So beginning with the land acknowledgement, the Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. Approval of the minutes from April 4th. Council? Moved by Councillor Hensby, second by Councillor Purdy. All in favor? Aye. Minutes are done. Approval of the order of business, additions and deletions. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Chair. There has been no requested additions or deletions. However, there is a requested deferral of item 11.3.1, nominating the Shubenacadie Waterway to the Canadian Heritage River System Program. And that's requested for deferral to the next meeting of Harbour East Regional Council.
Okay, we will defer that. Is there anything from members of council? There was some discussion with the clerk as to whether or not there's a need to go in camera, or whether we can do the in camera in public, so we can let some of our staff go and put that at the start of our agenda. Would someone like to move that then, if no one has any problems?
Yeah. I'll move it.
16.1, that's the one.
Yeah, the in-camera.
I'll move that Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council 1 adopt the recommendations as outlined in the private and confidential report dated April 17th, 2024, and to direct that private and confidential report dated April 17th, 2024 be maintained private and confidential.
Second by Councillor Purdy. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All right, so that's carried. So that takes care of that. So next, when we actually, did we actually approve the order of business? No, we got kind of waylaid into that, didn't we? Yeah. Is that all right, Mr. Clerk, or can we now do the additions?
We should just make the.
Okay. All right. So would someone like to move the order of business of which one item we just did? Moved by Councillor Purdy.
Second.
Second by Councillor Mancini. All those in favor? Aye. So we have a order of business. Thank you. So next up, business of writing of the minutes. We have none. Any conflicts of interest to declare tonight, colleagues? Nope. Motions of reconsideration, there are none. There are no motions of rescission. We have no deferred business. There are no tabled matters. So that brings us to our main events tonight. We have two public hearings. So the first one is 10.1.1, development agreement for an expansion to an existing commercial business at 667 Highway 7, Westfall Gateway Meat Market. So thank you all for joining us here tonight for this public hearing. The process we'll start with our staff presentation, and then council will have a chance to ask questions of clarification from staff, and then the applicant will have an opportunity to present. After that, we will go to the public hearing, and speakers can participate for a maximum of 5 minutes. When that time comes, please keep your comments respectful, on topic, and directed to me, the chair. The clerk will hold up a yellow sign when you have 30 seconds left, and then a red sign when your time is up. It's very high tech here.
Hold on, Simon. Very good. You didn't mess it up.
After we've gone through everyone on the list and everyone's had an opportunity to speak, I will call 3 times to see if there are any additional speakers, and then we'll go back to the applicant and staff, and then council will have our debate. So clerk, can you confirm if we have any additional correspondence regarding this item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All correspondence for this item has been circulated to members of Community Council.
Thank you. So with that, we'll go to our staff presentation. That would be Claire.
Good evening, Harbour East and Marine Drive Community Council. My name is Claire Toos. I am a planner on the Rural Policy and Planning Applications team. However, this is an urban file that I'll be presenting for you tonight. And it's a development agreement for 667 Highway 7 in Westfall. So this application was made by Harvey Architecture on behalf of the property owner. And the proposal is for an expansion of an existing commercial building, which is the home of Gateway Meat Market. And this is by through a development agreement process. So for context, the site is located in Westfall. If you're heading out of Dartmouth along Main Street, it's just after the Forest Hills and Forest Hills Parkway extension, Forest Hills extension and Forest Hills Parkway intersection, but before Montague Road. This is a photo of the building and specifically the customer entrance that is currently existing. Here's a street view looking southwest on the property. And then this is the location where the proposed addition will go. So it's the eastern side of the building or the right side of the building. And the structure that was there was issued a demo permit back in June of 2023. And that lot was consolidated with the 667 Highway 7 lot in November of 2023. So in HRM, we have 3 levels of planning documents that we look to when considering proposals. The first one is the regional plan. It's our most broad document and it applies to the entirety of the municipality. So this document guides where population growth and the investment of services should occur. And then we have our community plans. So I think we're at 23 different community plans, but in this case, we're in Cole Harbour, Westfall. And these plans outline where, how, and what types of development we'd like to see occur. And typically these uses, or some of them, are only permitted with a council approval and through a community engagement process. For every community plan area, we have a land use bylaw. So this is your as-of-right development. Maybe you need a building permit and you look to the development controls such as permitted uses, setbacks, lot coverage, that sort of thing. And you wouldn't need to go through a community engagement process or go to council for an approval. So on screen is the development agreement process. So staff review a completed application, we conduct community engagement, and we draft a staff report for council. First reading was given 2 months ago, and tonight we are all here for the public hearing. So based on council's decision, there is a 14-day appeal period. The site is serviced with sewer and water. It's in the C4 zone, the highway commercial designation, and the existing use is commercial. And the enabling policy for this proposal is HC3. So this policy enables council to consider expansions to commercial buildings in the highway commercial designation that are not otherwise enabled by the applied zone. In this case, the zone caps commercial uses at 10,000 square feet of gross floor area, and they'd like to go a little bit bigger. So council must consider the following in rendering their decision on an expansion by development agreement: site design, including access, parking, and storage, stormwater management, and separation from residential uses. For all development agreement applications, we also have an implementation policy. So in this case, council is considering conformance with the intent of the MPS, the adequacy of services and road networks, adequacy of development controls to mitigate land use conflict, and site suitability in terms of soils, steep slopes, location of watercourses, and potential for flooding. So the proposed expansion includes the demolition of those existing structures on the neighboring property, which again has already occurred, and as well the consolidation of those 2 lots, which has already occurred. And then in terms of the actual addition, it's a 2-story addition on the right-hand side, but also the alteration of the existing facade and to the facade and side walls to create flat roofs. There's also a new front entrance, and it will include a pedestrian-covered walkway. There are no changes to the existing driveway access. There are no changes to the existing parking lot, and the 20-meter watercourse buffer will continue to be maintained from Loon Lake. For public engagement, we mailed out 21 fact sheets. We also had a website, so I received 6 individual calls and emails and 99 unique web page views. However, I think these stats might be a bit outdated as they're from when the staff report was written, and we received a lot of correspondence in the last couple weeks leading up to tonight. So some of the feedback, overall support, lots of positive support for this expansion. Sentiments included that Gateway Meat Market provides a very necessary service in the community. Some of the concerns just related to traffic safety and parking, and there was a concern regarding the sightliness of the proposal. So in terms of traffic safety and parking, the applicant was required to submit a traffic impact statement. This was reviewed by HRM Engineering, Traffic Management, our transportation planning folks, and also transit services. So they didn't have any concerns with the road network or the access. The land use bylaw actually only allows for one access into the site. And in terms of parking, they actually have a lot more parking than what the bylaw requires. And you'll see on this next slide, parking is going to continue to be regulated through the C4 zone. In terms of the sightliness of the site, we didn't have any issues with the architecture proposed, and of course they have to meet the building code and the land use bylaw. So the development agreement, do you guys want me to pause while you figure things out? I don't know if you're taking it.
I was just debating whether or not we should
Yeah,
pause,
okay.
but
You're in the dark over there in the corner, so I didn't want to keep in the dark. Apologies.
Okay. Yeah, would you like me to go back at all to the public? Okay. Yep, no worries. So
thank you, Claire. Apologies about that.
well, I thought, should I keep plowing through or no, it's okay. So yeah, again, enormous support for the expansion, and that it's a necessary service, and concerns related to traffic safety and parking. And we had the applicant submit a traffic impact statement, which was reviewed by development engineering, transportation planning, traffic management, and transit, and a parking analyst. And there were no concerns with the road networks leading to the site or the access, and parking. No concerns with parking from any of those departments either. And the parking that is there is currently more than what the bylaw requires, and it will continue to be even after the expansion. There was concern relating to the sightliness of the proposal, but staff didn't have any issues with the architecture, and the building code, of course, will continue to apply in this case. So the development agreement will allow for the following. So it allows for a food store or any use permitted within the C4 zone, subject to the provisions contained within the applicable land use bylaw. A maximum building footprint of 18,000 square feet. So where the bylaw caps it at 10,000 square feet gross floor area, the DA caps it at 18,000 square feet of footprint. And this is because it's a two-story addition, gives them a little bit more flexibility. But they still do have to meet a maximum height of 35 feet, which is the same as the land use bylaw requirement and is consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. There is a reduced front yard setback to 3 meters, a reduced side yard setback to 2 meters, and parking, landscaping, and outdoor storage will all continue to be regulated through the underlying C4 zone. So every development agreement includes a non-substantive amendment section. So this is a change to the agreement that can be made without a formal public hearing, without the public engagement part. The development officer or community council could authorize a change by resolution. So for this agreement, a non-substantive amendment could be another 1,000 square foot addition, provided 50% lot coverage is not exceeded. The reason for this is just flexibility, unforeseen, we need 1,000 square feet one way or the other. We didn't feel that that was a huge impact to the site. And of course, the land use bylaw provisions will also still need to be met. And then extension to commencement and completion timeframes. So having said that, staff recommend that council approve the proposed development agreement and require the agreement to be signed within 120 days. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. So next up, it would be questions of clarification from council. Does anyone have any questions for Councillor Mancini?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Claire, thanks for the presentation. I apologize for the interruptions of the light show. I only have one question of clarification. When you looked at the policy consideration, that there was you felt that there was no traffic impact. So I believe everybody in this room has probably been in the store at one point in time, and it's even now as it exists, there's lineups of not only people, but there's lineup of cars trying to turn either right or left into there. So was that examined, that looked at? I even understand the applicant's prepared to assist with lighting, traffic lighting, if it's pretty close to the next set of lights, which is probably not, wouldn't approve it, but there is an issue there of cars lining up because of how popular the store is.
Certainly. Through the chair to the councillor, the traffic impact statement was reviewed by the engineers who are aware of some of the constraints on Highway 7 and Main Street, especially during peak hours. However, the expansion was not such that it would warrant not doing the expansion. Like, it's not so great that we shouldn't allow it because it's going to impact traffic to that extent where it just, the roads can't handle it. I think the fact that that is a very busy area is sort of an existing problem. This expansion won't make it any worse. And in fact, the expansion, when you look at the floor plans, the retail area is moving from that one side to the other side, and the rest of the area is all for storage, for staff. Upstairs is, staff lunchroom and office space. So in terms of the experience of going to Gateway, you'll have a bit more room and they'll have flexibility to have more goods and products, but not that much more. It's not like the floor area is really doubling in size. So that's also taken into consideration in the TIS, is what is the real floor area for staff and for clients. And then I had another thought come to my mind. Sorry, you go ahead.
And in no way was I suggesting we shouldn't allow it because of the traffic impact. My question is about, is there an impact because we're expanding? You've answered that. Is there a way to improve the traffic flow in and out of that operations? That's where the point I was trying to get to, because it is a challenge now, especially those peak times, right?
Yeah, I think that would be, sorry, through the chair, the councillor, I think that would be a more comprehensive change to the whole road network, not site specific with this agreement. The bylaw has a clause in it that says that every commercial property can only have one access. So that would need to be changed. Maybe, if this site were to expand further and there was parking on both sides or something, that would need to be changed. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that, Claire. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. No others. So we'll go ahead and we'll open the public hearing. So the first up will be the applicant. Before we get rolling on the public hearing, I want to just take a moment to acknowledge we have one of our own here in the room tonight, former Councillor Gloria McCluskey, who probably needs no introduction to most people in the room. So welcome, Gloria. Next, we'll go then to the project presentation.
All right, great, thanks. Hey, can you hear me? My name is Colin Dorgan. I'm an architect with Harbour Architecture. I've been working on this project now with probably over a year, trying to help Jamie and Tamara get kind of future-proof their expansions. So the word expansion here, it's kind of been synonymous with Jamie's presence there. He's just had a flourishing business, and we very much tried to consider how this next move can help kind of almost master plan this site in a way that will allow them to have enough on-site storage so that they don't have to continue doing piecemeal expansions. And obviously the development agreement is a major part of that to allow us to have that room to expand. So Claire mentioned that there's been a consolidation of the neighbouring site, and there was an existing building on that site that, and we're basically kind of going as far as that wall was. That's why there's a reduction on the side yard. So that was one of the key points that we had to request a change. So yeah, so the background is started in 2008. Jamie and Tamara had a single employee, really focused on trying to provide affordable solution and healthy grocery provision to the community. So they do require like a lot of bulk purchasing. And so right now, a lot of their storage is happening off-site. So they're, renting warehouse space and so on. So more of that can happen on-site. It will help them to continue to get good deals when they see them, ensure that they're kind of continuing that approach and giving themselves flexibility to be able to get produce and meats, etc., when they see the opportunity and not have to worry as much about storage, etc. So those are some of their major problems now. But they've grown now to 90 or 85 or so staff at the moment, and we all know it's hopping. Like anytime you go by, especially at peak times. Like I was going to a site past further out on Eastern Shore and down past Tacoma, and it was Easter time, and like it was a queue down the line. So we are very much aware of the challenge that they have. So 2024, where we are now, obviously the rising food costs, everyone sees everything that's in the news about the petitions against other grocers and so on. And like that's one thing you can say they've made a commitment to really trying to keep the price down, and like it results in this. It just so happens they're in this spot where they have a tight site. Like it probably was a great opportunity when they saw it first with just the two of them and an employee, but now it's 85 people, and obviously the demand is there. So we just listed here like 90% of the staff are living in Dartmouth, locals staff, and we expect 30 or 40 staff are needed more. So we've tried to give them like good internal experience. So like Claire mentioned, there's a very generous staff room, so the employees are going to get kind of a very generous space to gather, have their things, shower, etc. And then there's a little bit of a change to the offices, but they're not seeing like much of an expansion in admin. It's basically trying to get like people who are working as butchers, as grocers, etc., to kind of be brought up and stay in their home area. So we think that's a really positive thing. Okay, so the challenge I mentioned about buying in bulk, constantly hearing from grateful customers, but everyone has that experience of waiting outside in the pouring rain, or it doesn't matter, Christmas time, you're trying to get ready for your event or whatever holiday you may be celebrating, and everyone's had that experience of waiting outside in the rain. So like number one for us was to try and make sure we can improve the pedestrian experience. So we basically are proposing to kind of like bring it into a little bit of a modern era. Currently, their store, as everyone knows, is kind of buried within the depth of their existing building. It's very dark, low ceilings, etc. No real exposure to the street. You kind of go in through this narrow door and you're lining up between cars. So you can see here we've got an awning, so a covered area. Where's my mouse? Oh, you can't see it on the screen. So there's a covered awning. There's a windscreen. Actually, that's going to be clear, and it may have, there's a clear glazed windscreen. There's going to be bike parking over there on the left-hand side, just where the people are standing in that image. So we're also giving people a different way of coming there. We're kind of going to have a prominent enough bike parking area out front. So maybe that will help a little bit with the traffic impact if people are coming locally. It's kind of hard because there isn't, you kind of have to go a little further, but there is obviously there's bus lane going in both directions on Main Street there with stops nearby. And just to maybe respond to one of the comments there about the traffic impact, we had looked at that very carefully. There was some back and forth with the engineering, with your staff, and we did explore the potential of like reversing the driveways, because if people are, there's a lot of crossing. So we thought there might be less crossing if you were turning left on the first drive if you're coming from the Halifax side. So that was explored, and there was potential for that to improve on potential collision risk. Like the people who did the traffic impact assessment indicated that the risk would be lowered. So we explored that, and that's noted in the latest version of the traffic impact assessment. So that was just worth mentioning, I feel. So the new retail space in area is getting larger, but a lot of that is going to be to improve their checkout area, because it's very tight right now, and we're kind of giving 2 aisleways for checkout just to help with the flow of people. So it will be able to like absorb peak demand quicker and more easily, like in terms of its functionality. It's going to be, and there's like a one-way in and a one-way out. So there's one larger vestibule with automatic doors that will, and there'll be heat in there as well. Obviously, people will be waiting around. So we're kind of like considering the comfort level of everyone as they're passing through. And aisleways are going to be larger. So it's not like, more racks, kind of jamming everything in just as tight as it was. It's really taking a more measured approach to giving people an improved comfort level. We are giving an additional dedicated meat prep room, so that's going to help with their ability to turn over, manage product. We're doubling the on-site product storage through warehousing and coolers. And then obviously I mentioned the pedestrian covered area as well. So those are the key features. I think we're just trying to make a little bit more of a bigger gesture towards the street. It's a large street. It's not like your average large scale grocer like a Sobeys, etc. Like it's still going to feel small when you're in there, but we're just trying to make it have a connection with the street. So there's like a street frontage. You'll be able to see activity internally. It's going to like give a little bit of more activity to that street, like as you're passing by as a pedestrian. Even if you're not involved, you're kind of, there's an element of passive supervision upon the street, upon the site, that you don't get currently. It's kind of like the front of the building almost looks like the back of the building, and we're really trying to turn that around. So even though we're keeping some of the existing facilities in operation through a phased approach to the construction, we are recladding it, re-roofing it so that it ties in and kind of makes one large cohesive move to the street. So the original image that we shared with Claire is in red, and now here's the new one that kind of above in black and white that indicates the rendered image there. So we've got that corner glass feature. There's some exit stairs from the upper level, etc., along the site. Here's a floor plan showing full completion of the front area. So you can see there's kind of 3 aisleways. I can't point now, unfortunately, I don't think. But there's 3 aisleways for circulating through. So similar to what they have right now. And then over on the right-hand side, like a large area dedicated to the checkout. And then that checkout is like pointing direct at the vestibule to exit. So we've got a large cooler area that's going to be basically like a double height that will be replacing the existing retail area, and that's just again to have a higher efficiency of storage. I think that's all I really need to say about it. So thanks very much for your time.
Thank you for the presentation. There is a question of clarification. Councillor Kent.
Yes, thank you. I did have just one, but I'd like a second one. I'll do that first. The 2 renderings that you showed, can you just explain that to me again? Because you said that's the one that Claire received.
Oh, yes.
Was that a rendering of what you anticipated to build first? And now this other one is now new, and is staff aware of that, right? Have they reviewed this new one?
Oh yeah, it's the same footprint. The only thing is the corner glass. You can see the strip glass we had on the right-hand side of the red. Here, I'm just highlighting
gotcha.
this.
Yeah.
So I just changed the form of that glass. That's the main difference there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The other question I have is in relation to your comment about the development agreement approach being more comprehensive, I guess, to a vision for the, is that a vision for the potential growth? Clearly, in 16 years, they've grown a lot. And it's listed as being piecemeal. And now this one, I guess where I'm going with it is it has the potential to continue to grow. Does this have the capacity to
This won't,
host some more growing?
no, this is as big as it can get currently.
Okay.
Yeah. Because of the,
As a single store? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
it's because of the site restraints, and you would need additional parking, to suit bylaws, et cetera, if it literally grew any larger in area. So there's just no more room on that site to fit any,
Okay.
and it doesn't benefit anyone to have it go additional stories. That wouldn't necessarily benefit anyone here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? Seeing none?
Yes, yes.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Hensby.
You talked about the traffic analysis about left-hand turn lane only maybe reversing the access point. You made a comment that each property has one entrance access issue. He's now acquired a second property beside the old Banfield Electric building and expanding that. So that lot itself had an entrance itself. So technically has now two entrances because are the properties being merged together, or is he just going to be building over the property line of the two lots?
Yes, the lot has already been consolidated, and where the building was, where that entrance was, will no longer be. The building is going to step out over that, so there wouldn't be any ability to drive a car in on that side. Does that answer your question?
Yes. And does there have been any discussion with the neighbor in regards to the Loon View Lane, the Atlantic Tire beside it, the joint, and the proposal for the retirement home and villages and behind? I think there's an appetite there for shared access off of Loon View Lane. If our traffic authority were to discuss about a traffic light situation there, I think your abutting neighbors to the west would dearly participate in a shared access corridor that you would enter from the back of your property. So I want to let you know that that option is available if this to go forward, because traffic is the biggest issue that I've been hearing for years. So
Thanks, I could pass that along.
Okay, any other questions of clarification? Okay, thank you, colleagues. So now we'll go to members of the public. So this is the part where you get to have a say in this. So you'll come up, you'll have 5 minutes, and you'll see the signs when they come up. So I'm going to start by going through the speakers list, of which we have one name, and that would be Gloria McCluskey. So Gloria, you're up first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of council, long time since I've been in here. I think you have new chairs. Anyway, I don't think that Gateway, with the crowd of people they bring in and the great job they do, I don't think they need many people to come out and speak in favor of this great development. I think it's great. And because of Gateway, we have so many people able to live eating nutritional food that they otherwise, I know that's not your concern when you're approving or disapproving of this, but I think it's wonderful what they do. And they care about their customers so much that they've even put a canopy there so that when you're lined up, you can stay out of the wet and the cold. But it will give them so much more space. It's so crowded there if you ever go out. And the building, they'll have a warehouse space now and more parking, and it's all great. So I know you know all of those things. I don't have to tell you that. But anyway, I'm here to speak in favor of it. I think it's great. So let's get her done.
Get her done, buddy.
Thank you, Gloria. So that's the end of the signed up list. So now I'm going to call 3 times. If there's anyone else who would like to speak to this is your chance to come forward. So would anyone like to speak to this matter tonight? Would anybody else like to speak to this tonight? Third and final call. Would anyone like to speak to this? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. All those in favor? Aye. Public hearing is closed. So council, what is your wish? I think
Motion on
this
the
would be you,
floor.
Councilor
Yeah.
Purdy.
All right, it's my pleasure to put the motion on the floor. I move that Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council 1 approve the proposed development agreement, which shall be substantially of the same form as set out in attachment A of the supplementary report dated March 19th, 2024. And 2, require that the proposed development agreement be signed by the property owner within 120 days, or any extension thereof granted by council on request of the property owner from the date of final approval by council and any other bodies as necessary, including applicable appeal periods, whichever is later. Otherwise, this approval will be void and obligations arising hereunder shall be at an end. So moved.
I heard
Thank
Councilor
you.
Hensby to the to the first there.
Did
So
he
for the
beat them
second.
to it?
Yes, I think he did.
He's fast, that Hensby.
Go ahead, Councilor.
So, okay, well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, we all know the importance that Gateway has in our community. I mean, for years and years. So thank you. Thank you to the owners of this amazing establishment. This expansion is needed. It is, regardless of the traffic impacts, which it's already a traffic nightmare in that area. We all know it. We all drive by it, seeing the lineups of people wrapping around the building. This expansion will enable those people to be on the inside and not the outside. And there is a functional study that needs to be done on Main Street number 7 Highway. It is, I mean, staff talk about it. We don't have a date yet for this to start. We're working on the public engagement for our Portland Street, Cole Harbour Road functional plan coming up in June. So I would assume Main Street would be next on the list. It needs to be reworked, rejigged, all of the different issues that we have along that corridor. It's not just in that area. There's others down more across from the Akuma buildings. And we need our Ross Road realignment to happen. So there's lots of issues on that corridor. So I would just encourage council to vote in favor for this. It's needed. This organization needs to be able to store their merchandise on their land, on their property, and not it's just an extra step that would be eliminated, and be able to, as the presenter said, to be able to take advantage of sales and deals as they see them and bring them in for the folks in the community. So I'm very happy to support this, very happy to see this, and I can't wait to see the new extension. It looks beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just want to say a couple of points there that I certainly will be supporting this development agreement. I think it's safe to say as well that the Gateway is iconic in HRM. And in particular, I think it's worth noting for me, the approach that they have as their model. It's very much family owned and operated and successful. It's obviously successful, but it's a model that I think that is exemplified by their expansion around the importance of their staff, their employees. And I appreciate that. The fact as well that they tried very hard and were successful with piecemealing it along the way as they grew. And now they see this as an opportunity to really do a more comprehensive approach and visionary approach to the expansion to the area. I think is welcome. I'm also quite impressed with this one. We don't get this very often, folks, that they have more parking than they need even for a larger expansion. They've gone down that route knowing that the street is that they're getting, obviously serving their customers, but they're also trying very hard, and they have tried very hard to deal with the access to get people off the street quickly into a large parking area. So that's impressive as well to me. So I will be supporting it, and there's really nothing there that in the policy that would suggest otherwise. So I'm happy to do that.
Thank you, Councilor Kent. Councilor Hensby.
Thank you much, Mr. Chairman. I'll be supporting the application, but I have one question for staff. If there was to be a renegotiated access point off of Loonview Road or Loonview Lane, would that change the development agreement in any way?
Through the chair to the councillor, I do not believe so.
Okay, thank you. I'm in support of this application. I've seen Great Gateway grow over the years from the small store it was to what it has been now, and then what it will be in the future by the looks of it. But my concern still is at traffic egress to and from the highway. I would hope that our traffic authority would really look at this opportunity with the Gateway owners as well as with Quest, the property owners that bought the Atlantic Tire and planning the retirement village settlement behind, that there should be a shared infrastructure there for traffic light, and then have better control of access in and off the location. My understanding, the Gateway has also bought the East-West restaurant site, and that building is about to be demolished. I believe that's probably going to be used for staff parking, and therefore have the customers closer to the store instead of walking down the highway. And I see that Mr. Glant's also present. He also owns a piece of property in between the East and West restaurant and this expansion. So I'm sure that there'll be discussions in the future with Mr. Glant and the property and what future ownership there may be with that. So I'll leave that to for future debate. But I wish you all the best. But please, 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 let's try and find a solution to the traffic.
Thank you, Councillor Hensby. I think you missed your calling as a real estate agent.
I'm just a deal maker.
Oh, okay. Councillor Mancini.
Very quickly, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. This is an easy one for obvious reasons. We look at the store, price, quality, and staff. That's the experience that we all have there. And are the actual owners in the room? Because I've not met them before. Are they not here? They're not? No, okay. Sorry? They're working probably, yeah. The only reason I asked the owner here, I wanted to simply thank them for this type of business. It's needed now more than ever. So I'm happy to support this. I, like Councillor Hensby and others, are concerned about that traffic piece, and hopefully in the future we can be creative and try to alleviate some of the challenges. But as former Councillor McCluskey said, let's get her done.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll just quickly say from the chair that it is such an essential service that they provide in the community. Had a Gateway chicken on, I think it was Tuesday night, with Gateway potatoes. So I've stood in that line many a time, and anything that we can do to alleviate that, because it definitely is a pressure there. It's a tongue-tied, successful business, and they've done really well in this community, and they're serving a vital need. So yeah, get it done. Question has been called. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. All those opposed? That carries. So thank you, everyone, for coming out for that one.
Is there a 10% Gateway coupon?
Not this time, Councillor. Okay, so now we're going to move along to our next item of business. Apparently the popular one in the room. Oh. Yeah, we'll just give it a second so folks can filter out. Give Elizabeth a little bit of bonus time to set up. Okay, since the crowd is filtered out, we'll now start with our next one. 10.1.2, this is case 24619, development agreement for 53 Queen Street, Dartmouth for a 90-meter mixed-use addition to a registered heritage property. So the process here will be the same. We'll be starting with the staff presentation and then going to the applicant. And then you as member of the public will have a chance to say, and our clerk here will keep time on all of us. So, Elizabeth, this would be your show to start. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Chair and members of Community Council. My name is Elizabeth Cushing, and I'm a heritage planner with Planning and Development. And today I'm presenting 53 Queen Street, Dartmouth's Heritage Development Agreement. The applicant is Rad Architects, and the location is 53 Queen Street in Dartmouth, also known as the former Dartmouth Post Office building. It was constructed circa 1917. The proposal for the development agreement is to permit a 90-meter mixed-use addition to the registered heritage property, which is currently being used as a surface-level parking lot. And the type of application is a heritage development agreement. To provide some context as to the location, it's pretty central in downtown Dartmouth. It is bound by Ochterlony Street, Queen and King Street, and Wentworth. That's it. And this photo shows 2023 Queen and Wentworth streets. And also the registered heritage properties within the area are shown in the deeper yellow color. And there's also an overlay for the proposed downtown Dartmouth Heritage Conservation District boundaries. The development agreement process for heritage properties is much the same as a regular development agreement, although we did approve a substantial alteration for the heritage property a couple months ago. And we also the heritage development agreement is also reviewed by the Heritage Advisory Committee. So we're at the public hearing stage, and then it would, assuming a positive result, would be moving towards the 14-day appeal period. This is a service lot. The zone is downtown Dartmouth. The designation is Historic Dartmouth Precinct. The existing use is commercial, although it's currently vacant. And the enabling policy that I'll discuss next is policy CHR 7 of the center plan. So the policy CHR 7 enables council to consider a proposal for any development or change in use that's not otherwise permitted by the land use bylaw to support the integrity, conservation, and adaptive reuse of registered heritage buildings. Some of the considerations that council may consider are that the proposal maintains the heritage value of the existing heritage resource and doesn't propose to demolish any of the character-defining elements of the structure. It substantially maintains the predominant setback of the existing heritage building. Impact on adjacent uses are minimized. It complies with pedestrian wind impact and shadow impact assessment protocols. And also that the level of proposed investment in conservation measures is proportional with the additional development rights through the development agreement. So some of the details of the proposal. So it would result in the construction of a 90-meter mixed-use building. The Dartmouth Post Office will contain commercial on the ground floor with residential uses above. The annex addition that's currently on the west of the structure would be deconstructed and rebuilt for townhouse uses. There's publicly accessible open space along the Queen Street elevation with additional seating and art pieces, and 2 levels of underground parking, which would be accessible from King Street. Some of the design elements that we've incorporated into the post office is that the new construction would have a setback to be consistent with the post office, again, tying in with the policy CHR 7 considerations. The original clock face from the clock tower of the post office would be incorporated into the pedestrian-oriented open space along the Queen Street elevation. The cornice of the podium aligns with the existing post office building, and there would be setbacks in the tower at the 4th and 9th floor. In terms of public engagement feedback, there was 118 notifications mailed. We received about 7 calls or emails from the general public. There was 1,378 webpage views, and we had about 20 people at the public information meeting, which was held on March 23rd, 2023. Some of the feedback that we received was some concerns regarding the height, wind, shadows, dust during construction, and blocking views of the neighboring properties. There was support for the overall building design, increasing the number of housing units, encouraging high-rise development while maintaining heritage buildings and increasing the livability in downtown Dartmouth. To try to address some of those concerns, there were some minor modifications, including an additional overhang/canopy and patio on the King Street elevation, just to help alleviate some of the minor wind impacts that were identified during winter months through the wind impact study, but it generally meets the pedestrian wind safety criterion. So the new design is going to be compatible with the existing neighborhood through its design, materiality, and form. And staff has done a thorough analysis of the standards and guidelines for the conservation of historic places in Canada to ensure this. There's a level of conservation efforts is proportionate to the increased density. So as I mentioned, this is another consideration for policy CHR 7. Staff have an internal calculator that we use that kind of compares the as-of-right development versus what is being proposed through the Heritage Development Agreement, and we found it to be what we would expect. 2 levels of underground parking will be provided. This includes accessible parking spaces and car share parking. The traffic impact study didn't identify any major issues or necessary improvements. As Claire mentioned in her presentation, this would be reviewed by our traffic services staff and parking. And the height is within the maximum limits for downtown Dartmouth. So keeping in mind that heritage development agreements don't necessarily have to abide to the zoning, that the 90-meter maximum is what this is currently being proposed, and that's would be consistent with the bylaw. In terms of the standards and guidelines for the conservation of historic places in Canada, the proposed development retains all the character-defining elements of the post office. Minimal intervention approaches have been applied, so some of the minor changes that we're seeing in terms of the connection of the post office to the new construction, it'll just be a glass breezeway, so it could be removed in the future if it needed to be. And there's 1 new door opening, which is to accommodate the new residential use on the top floor of the post office. Again, something that could be reversed if needed. So any replacement that's being done to any of the historic materials will be in kind and based on documentary evidence. And again, the setbacks and materials are compatible with the post office. So as I mentioned, with the cornice line being relatively consistent is some of the materiality. Those are some of the aspects that we would have explored when we did this evaluation, and we found it to be consistent. A non-substantive amendment is a change to the agreement, which could be made without a formal public hearing. The development officer or community council could authorize this change by resolution. So for this proposed development agreement, that includes any changes to schedules B, D, and E that are provided that the changes do not conflict with the text of the development agreement. Changes to parking, amenity, outdoor lighting, landscape requirements, and/or signage, and the granting of an extension to the date of commencement of construction or for the completion of the development. So staff recommendation contained in the staff report was arrived at after a detailed analysis of all relevant policies and the standards and guidelines for the conservation of historic places in Canada. So staff recommend 1, approve the proposed development agreement, which shall be substantially the same form as set out in attachment A, and 2, require the agreement to be signed by the property owner within 120 days or any extension thereof granted by council on request of the property owner from the date of final approval by council and any other bodies as necessary, including applicable appeal periods, whichever is later. Otherwise, this approval will be void and obligations arising hereunder shall be at an end. It's a long one. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Questions of clarification, Councillor Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Elizabeth, thank you for the presentation as always. I'm trying to visualize and understand the post office and the new building, the tower. It's there. So they're connected, and are you accessing, if you're in the post office where if I understand correctly for your presentation, that's where the commercial piece will be, or one of the commercial pieces, will you be able to access the tower from inside of the post office into the tower, the new piece?
Through the chair to the counselor, yes, you would be. As said, there's going to be a glass breezeway from the
That's
second.
what you mean by the breezeway?
Yeah, that's the
Okay, I didn't
second story,
understand.
and that you can't quite see it in that photo, but it is on the second story of the post office on the side there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my second question is around the heritage aspect. You talked about the level of conservation, it matches up. So can you talk about some of those things that you're looking for? Because this is not typically as like a heritage meeting discussion. Can you help us understand why you support it? There's no change to it. They've already done some work to that building. Can you just talk about that so we can understand that better?
Sure. Through the chair to the counselor. So as I said, one of the aspects that we look at, we have that internal calculator that we use that compares as of right development with what is being proposed. And that looks at the land value in particular to see kind of a dollar amount, associates a dollar amount with what is being proposed and what would otherwise be allowed. And that's kind of what we use as our baseline to determine the amount of conservation efforts that we would want to see
Right.
in terms of the dollar value. For the post office, there already has been quite a bit of work underway already with the masonry work, which was a hefty amount of work, as well as they had purchased some windows to kind of reinstate the transoms, the semicircular transoms that would have been there. So there has been some, I think they've also already started to kind of get rid of some of the granite stone to reconstruct some of the stairs. And we're already seeing that investment for the open space. So
Okay.
we were comfortable with what was being proposed.
Last question, if I may. You talked about the clock tower being on the pedestrian level. Was there any discussion of returning it to its original spot on the roof?
Through the chair to the counselor, yes, there was quite extensive conversations, and Rad, I'm sure, can attest to that, about potentially the rehabilitation of the clock tower in its entirety. That would be kind of above and beyond what we would anticipate for, based on our calculations
Right.
of what we would expect. And I think just the feasibility of it would have been quite challenging.
So you didn't require it, but for the applicant, it's a price tag to put it back on top. Is that fair to say?
Essentially.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth. Mr. Chair, thank you.
No other questions of clarification? Okay. Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth, for the presentation. I'm sure you'll be back up towards the end. So next step is we'll open the public hearing, and the applicant is up first with 10 minutes to present their case. I have Darren and Raylene. Welcome.
Can you guys hear me all right? Awesome. So my name's Darren Franson. I'll be presenting on...
Your mic, your mic.
We can hear you, but the mic is off, which for the recording is not great.
Can you hear me all right now?
Okay, now we're good.
All right. So my name is Darren Franson. I'll be presenting on behalf of the client, Jim Lawley, who is a historical developer within Halifax. And he's well known for a lot of his historical developments. For example, Keats Brewery, for example, would be one of his main projects. And what I wanted to do is I just basically wanted to start with the image of the original historical post office. So right there, you can actually see the clock tower we were all just talking about. And one of the main reasons it was taken down in the 70s was because of, maintenance on it. A lot of those historical buildings really have a lot of trouble with maintenance, and they kind of just fall into disrepair. And then that's why it was kind of taken down. So as Elizabeth did mention, we did look into reinstating the tower. It was just a hefty price tag and a lot of maintenance associated with it. So what we decided to do as an alternative was really kind of take those clock faces that are in storage right now and really bring them down to the street level so like the public can interact with them. And really just this idea of bringing heritage right down to the street. Okay. So as Elizabeth mentioned, the site is centrally located. It's a great spot right in the middle of the city. So in this context map, the red square is basically the site. And so obviously it's very close to, Alderney Landing, all the supports of Alderney Landing, public transit, the ferry, etc. And so what I've also got highlighted in the purple circles there is basically the new developments, the new high rises that are kind of coming to Dartmouth, or the existing ones. So you can kind of see King's Wharf, and then even up by the bridge, we're starting to see some more high rise developments coming. So density is coming to downtown Dartmouth, and this is just kind of the first step. The form of the building was something we worked with collaboratively with the planners.
There you
So
can see it connected.
So on the left-hand side, that's really the existing condition of the building. And then as we kind of move along and we kind of went through the design process, we thought what would be the best way of kind of adding density to the downtown. So we first looked at kind of just doing a complete kind of mid-rise right across the entire site with this idea of density. But the challenge with that is really you're kind of getting some major shadowing on the neighboring properties. And then you're also starting to overshadow the importance of the historical building. So as you kind of go to the right there, we start to see more of a tapered, like a stepped back idea. And then we start to see kind of really focusing all the development in the old parking lot space. And this is really the idea of just respecting the historical building. That's the whole idea around that kind of form. This is basically the site plan of the new development. So on the left-hand side, you have King Street, and on the south of the page, the bottom of the page, you have Queen, and then on the right of the page, you have Wentworth Street. So obviously the post office is mostly on the Wentworth and Queen corner, and then the new development is kind of focused on the kind of King and Queen Street corner. What you can see here is you can actually see that the new development is set back in line with the historical building along Queen. And what we're really trying to do there is just provide like a public space, like a public gathering space, really a central node within the city. So what we've done is that red circle on the corner of King and Queen is going to be an interpretive art piece the developer is willing to put in. And that's really going to tell the entire story, the entire narrative of the site. So not just the kind of post office story, but also the entire heritage of it. So there's going to be this idea of kind of bringing that history and that kind of lineage back to the site. And then on the right side of that image, on Wentworth and Queen, you'll see a smaller red dot, which is where we're planning to put the clock tower faces back down to the street. Once we get down off of the tower, our main goal was really to kind of break up the streetscape and kind of blend it back into, what you would expect in typical Dartmouth. So it's really about breaking up the facade, and what we kind of use in our office is we kind of think about it as like the village scale. So there's a lot of smaller pieces to kind of mimic what's happening in downtown Dartmouth. You're not seeing large, big box kind of forms, for instance. So this is a view from King Street looking towards Queen Street. You can see the church on the left-hand side of that image. This image here is really a view from King and Queen, and this is really all about that public green space there, that community space. We've kind of masked in what we think maybe that interpretive art piece might be, but you can see there's a lot of landscaping, a lot of investment into landscaping that's all about public benches, and it's really designed to kind of make people want to stay there and occupy that space. It's a very public investment. As we kind of move kind of midway down Queen Street, we are using the end of the historical building as the apartment entrance. So on the right side there, you see the historical annex, which we had to retrofit a little bit and to kind of just turn it into townhouses. And then on the left side, you see the new development. So when people walk into the new apartment building, you're going to experience the historical on the right, and you're going to experience the new on the left. This view is also from Queen, and this is really just focusing in on those townhouses. So repurposing that annex building, which originally had 6-foot high kind of windowsills, which you couldn't see out of. And we've really just brought that down and start to make some doors out of them. And then this is a public green space from the view of Wentworth and Queen. And this is really showcasing that historical building. And also the clock on the right-hand side there. Those are the original clock faces that we're going to repurpose, put them down at grade, like I said, and really make them like a historical piece people can engage with. This image here is really all about kind of the tapering of the building. So this idea that the building is tapering up to the high rise. So it's really about kind of taking that historical building, stepping it back, and easing the kind of impact on that historical building. The mid-rise height is really based on the neighboring properties. So if you look at it in elevation, that mid-rise height is based on the shuffle across the street, but also the Tell Lofts across the street on Wentworth as well. And then this is our final slide here, just kind of showing the height of the building and how that tapering is really tapering right back up to the high rise there. So really an idea about respecting the historical building as much as we can. Thank you.
Questions of clarification, Councillor Kent?
Yes, thank you. So the walkway, I feel like I might have been able to tell where that was, the connectivity between the post office and the new building. I think you had it on the,
This one here. This one here.
is that where's the walkway? The connectivity between, the site plan, I think, yeah.
Okay.
Could we bring that up? So is that at the back there, halfway down with all the shrubs?
So if you can see that kind of gray box that kind of connects the
Yeah.
new development to the historical post office, there's kind of like green on either side of it.
Okay, and while this is up, my other question was, the historical post office lower roof would imply that there's a lower building there. What's in that? What are your plans for in that area? We didn't see that from that side.
Are you, sorry,
It's
is it the
The
one?
back piece
The back
at the
part there,
top.
right? So that,
Historical post office lower roof.
yeah, so that back section is facing an easement, and that lower roof is part of the commercial space on the first floor as
I
well.
see. Okay.
And we're reusing that roof as also a residential patio for the upper residential units in the historical building.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mancini?
Thank you for the presentation. I do want to comment before I get my question of clarification. I really liked how you explained how you ended up with the final design. I'd like to see in the different variations. So that was very, very helpful. I'd like to see other applicants do the same. I want to go just quickly back to the clock piece, if you may. So is the intent is like you have in what I'm seeing on the screen there, that it's just a clock face, it's not encased in anything, you're not bringing any of the tower itself? Is that the intent, or that's just yet to be determined?
No, we're not going to bring any of the tower itself down, like any of the stonework or the masonry. But what we're going to do is we're going to actually encase it in kind of some glass to kind of protect the clock
Okay,
faces.
right.
And we're going to have some nice kind of inscriptions around it and really treat it like a piece of art it is.
Right.
And then it's also going to be refurbished as a timekeeper. So Dr. Clock will be kind of working on it and kind of refurbishing it all. So
Should
you'll
be
actually
actually
be able
working?
to. What's that?
It'll actually be working, the clock?
The clock will actually be working, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
really?
And it'll be double-sided, and we'll have lots of nice, great lighting in there as well. So it's really going to be an important part of that corner, really, in
Oh.
that community.
Very good. Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. No other questions of, you're wanting, okay, Councillor Purdy.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so I was going to ask if it was going to be a working clock, so that's awesome. And I just had a question on the stairs to the townhouses there. They look kind of industrial in the back. There's no back to the stairs. Is that safe?
Yeah, so the point of those stairs is really to allow as much light to the lower townhouse units as possible. So we're trying to kind of remove those kind of risers. So it'll be safe for sure, absolutely. It'll be up to building codes. But the idea is really to allow as much light to those lower units as possible. So on that lower section there, those are 1-story townhouses.
Yeah.
And then on the upper, we're seeing 2-story townhouses. So we've really got 8 sets of townhouses there. And we've actually done a masonry stair all the way across. So the idea is that people are going to sit on that stair and really occupy that kind of, that landscape, Queen Street.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
Councillor Kent?
Yeah, thank you. I haven't heard the word affordable housing of any sort. Is there any element to this piece that is dedicated to that?
We have we've actually went through and put in some micro units in this project. So the client is probably going to be looking at this on their end, but we've actually gone through and made kind of micro units as part of this development. So that's kind of, you could kind of think of that as affordable. But I wouldn't know if they've actually gone down the path of seeking funding for affordable units or
Okay.
anything like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. So next, we'll go to members of the public. Is there a sign-up sheet there, Simon, for this one? We had no one sign up, so we're going to jump right to calls to all you folks. So if anyone would like to come up tonight and to speak to this, now is your chance. I think that would be Mr. Clark. Yes, come forward. Oh. So just your name and community for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Where's this push?
Oh, there's the light. It was a dark green. Now it's a bright green. Hi. Yeah, Paul Clark, excuse me, District 5. I've done some reading on the post office. I've worked for Canada Post. I've worked in the post office. So I'm familiar with it both from a historical and working background. I've also been raised in Dartmouth. At first, I wanted the clock tower put back on, let alone, ignoring cost. I just wanted it on. So that's not the way it's going to be. So a couple questions come to mind. First of all, I heard the mention of a double face clock. So all 4 clock faces will be incorporated.
No, we're just going to reuse 2 of them.
Sorry, I hate to be a stickler, but it's not a back and forth at this time. So,
sorry, Mr. Chair.
yeah,
Sorry, Mr.
the way
Chair.
it works is you ask your questions. Some of us folks up here will take notes,
Okay.
and then at the end there's an opportunity for the applicant and for staff to respond. And for
My
council to ask
apologies,
questions. No,
Mr.
no,
Chair.
that's okay.
Another item I had was what's going to happen to the dungeon? The dungeon is the basement. And it was severely lacking in, light is not really important, but ventilation. And has ventilation been improved? Is it going to be a commercial space? Another item I wanted to bring up is with the clocks. Halifax, I prefer if both clocks weren't working. I have one clock working, and the other clock, Halifax has their city hall clock set at 9:04:35 seconds, the time of the explosion, on December 6, 1917. And I was wondering if one of those clocks could be set at that time, 9:04:35 seconds. Now, I've also found out that the reason why the clocks are being incorporated, because originally they weren't going to be part of the structure. And it's only because, correct me if I'm wrong, pressure they got from a heritage representative of HRM that they are incorporating 2 of the clocks. 2 of the clock faces. What's going to happen to the other 2? One of them was in the Dartmouth Museum at one time, way back when I was a teenager. But now all 4 clocks are in storage, thank goodness. Thank goodness somebody had the foresight to put them in storage. What's going to happen to those other 2? And that's all I want to say at this time. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. So would anybody else like to speak to this tonight? Yes, come.
I have a question.
Come forward and you can ask your question. Just say your name and your community for the record, please.
Hi, my name's Elaine Young, and I live at 70 Ochterlony, so we live above 2F by C. And I have a couple of concerns, and I think maybe they've already been addressed at the first planning meeting, so I apologize because I wasn't at that one. But number one would be traffic, and I know that it did say there was a study done. We actually oversee Wentworth and Ochterlony, so I'm really concerned about, and that is a crazy corner right now, intersection really right now. And I'm wondering with this extra population growth, how that's going to be affected and if there's any future plan for the traffic in that area. The number two is that just hearing about that patio that we saw that's on the that would be facing our building, I think 70 Octraloni, it sounds like. I'm just not clear about where that patio is and if that will have any kind of impact on us who have patios right there on our patio is in fact faces the post office, the wall of the post office. So I'm just wondering where that is, and I'm wondering about noise factor associated with that. And number three is I'm wondering about timeline for this building and noise factor that comes in already because they've been bulldozing the inside of the post office. Really, the post office is really, the walls are the only thing that's left as far as I can see. The inside is completely gutted. So I know that we still have the heritage outside building, but I'm not sure about kind of how that just is what does it mean by a heritage building? Is it just the facade of the outside, or is the inside incorporated somehow into that vision? I'm just not clear on that. It's not, I haven't heard anything about that. Is there anything else for us? Since I'm here, do you have any?
I'll go after you.
Okay. So that's it for me.
We're asking a friend. Will you call it your friend?
What?
Thank you for your contribution. So would anyone else like to, we'll go to the gentleman in the back called out by his friend already. So, and then you sir over there, you'll be next. Okay. Thanks.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. My name is Rick Weldon. As it has already been abundantly clear, I'm a neighbor of Elaine's. I'm actually a resident of Founders Corner and the president of the condominium board. Recognizing that a lot of the emphasis tonight is really about how this development reconciles with the heritage requirements and heritage designations and preservation, and I understand that. But having lived in Founders and in downtown Dartmouth now for 13 years, I've seen the growth, and one of the concerns beyond those that my neighbor has referenced, I see that there's 2 levels of underground parking, and while not getting into the actual physical numbers, intuitively it suggests to me that with a lot of the new development that is going on, the parking that is being built for the building is only a certain percentage of the actual occupancy of the building. I recognize that part of that is the goal of the city is to try to get people out of cars and into commuting and into an active space. But we really haven't quite evolved to that point yet. And what we're seeing with a lot of the other buildings that are being built or have been built in downtown Dartmouth over the last decade is that there is a lot of on-street parking that's being used by the residents who are unable to park in the physical buildings. I suspect that this building is going to be yet another example of that. We deal with a lot of those issues downtown already. Using Founders as an example, we're constantly having vehicles towed away from in front of our garage entrances. We constantly have illegal parking in the loading zone next to our building. And of course, the expectation as things become more dense is that's only going to increase. I recognize that part of that is the role of the contractors for the city to make sure that the enforcement takes place properly. And kudos to them. They are very, very good around our building. But it becomes a concern as it will get to the point also for the commercial operators in the area that their customers won't have a place to park because the residents of the buildings that surround them will be using the on-street parking. I recognize it's really not necessarily a problem distinct to this building. It's more of an evolving problem in the downtown core in total, but it is an element that will be created and exacerbated by the construction of this building. I think it's 120 units or in that neighborhood. You do the math on that, and you do have the potential of 120 vehicles. And it doesn't sound like, you know, the underground parking is going to address that. So it's less of a question and more of a concern as we see the densification of the downtown core of Dartmouth. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to? Oh, right. Sorry, I gave you the floor next.
I live at Founders Corner also, and
Just your name and community for the tape.
Bill Searle, yes. And I'm wondering about the First World War Memorial. It's very small, but it's very attractive war memorial there. Haven't heard anything about that. I heard about the clock, but that war memorial is a concern of mine. I'd like to stay in the neighborhood. The other thing is, when I was here in March, they said it was going to be a 24-story building. And now I read in my pamphlet there, it's going to be a 90-meter building. I don't know if that is, 24 stories is a lot less than 90 meters in my books, but I don't know. It's just a discrepancy that may or may not come about. The other thing is, when I put my deposit in for Founders Corner, they were still excavating the basement, the parking area, and the pyritic slate that was there. I remember the developer saying a few choice words under his belt because he had to haul it out to Bedford to get it dumped, and he was paying a fee for it. But we need buildings. We need disposal solutions for pyritic slate. And so I addressed this to the city hall there. I don't have any problems with dumping the slate into the harbor myself. I think it's the best choice of a lot of bad choices. What I do like about it is that it's been missed that you charge the developer for tipping fees, and then you charge the buyer of the real estate an arm and a leg because it's prime real estate, and then you tax the hell of it. And I don't really have a problem with that. I'd rather do that than raise my taxes. We need a disposal for pyritic slate. And so I think that, I'm just thinking in my own mind that this is what I think that the city has to do. If we're going to have development in the city, we got to have a disposal for pyritic slate. I guess that's about it. I can't think of anything else. That war memorial though is really it's a sweet little memorial. It's all bronze and it's very nice.
A question of clarification. Yeah, Bill, just before you go, Councillor Kent has a question of clarification for you.
Yes,
Not debate.
thank you. No, not debate. On the war memorial, can you help me understand where it is on that property?
It's when you look at the Canadian coat of arms, that's about 6 foot high.
On the post office building?
On the post office building, on the newer part, not the original part.
Okay.
I would say it sits pretty well in front of that. Not perfectly in front of that, but it sits in front of that.
And it's still there?
And it's still there,
Okay.
and it's really a nice little memorial.
Okay,
And
thank
it's
you.
all bronze. It has the flags on it, the Union Jack, and it has names on it. And it's a really sweet little war memorial. It's not grandiose like the Grand Parade, but I think it was it might have been the original Dartmouth War Memorial prior to the one in Sullivan's Pond. And I think it's just First World War names that are on it, but I could be wrong.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so would anyone else? Yes, sir, come forward. Just your name and community for the record, please.
My name is Jeremy Warwick. I live in District 5. First, I'd like to commend you on your good behavior and your courtesy and good manners. I think the federal politicians could take a lesson from you. Good, well done. It's always a pleasure to listen to you. I live on Octorlonie at Victoria Road. I live in an apartment building built in 2019 called Lotus Point with my friend Paul. My concern is affordable housing. So now I read Councillor Austin's website religiously since 2016, I believe, and you've often referred to two concepts which I think have fallen into disuse perhaps, and they're called inclusionary zoning and density bonus fund. Now, inclusionary zoning is, as I believe, understand it, is where the developer provides low-income units within their building. And the density bonus fund is where they opt to pay into a fund that serves the community for low-income housing, I believe. Now, I've got your newsletter from October of last year talking about Bill 329. And so I don't know the status of this bill, but it sounds bad for these concepts. It sounds like these concepts will fall into complete disuse if this bill goes through. I don't know if it has yet. So I'm just wondering if you could give your opinions on these two concepts and how we can have developers do things that benefit the community. I believe that this building will be occupied by people who can afford to, and I believe the rents will probably start at in excess of $3,000 when it's built. So I think it'll be occupied by people coming down from Toronto. That's my belief. So I'm wondering what this building will actually do for our community other than bringing in people from the outside. So that is my questions and concern. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this tonight? Would anyone else like to speak to this tonight? Third and final call. Would anyone else like to speak to this tonight? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. So at this time, the applicant has an opportunity to respond to any points, questions, concerns that were raised during the hearing, if you wish.
Awesome. Can you hear me all right? Awesome. The War Memorial is a big one for us. That's actually something we've been working with actually the last month or so, 2 months. So we've been working with the HRM to actually come up with a plan for the War Memorial. So the War Memorial will actually stay on the site. It's going to be kind of cleaned up and refurbished. And where we're planning to put it is we're planning to put it on the side of the townhouses there. So it's basically just going to move about, I would say 20 feet away. And all we're going to do is we're going to light it up. We're going to make a thing out of it. We're actually going to give it more prominence on the site because right now you kind of walk by it and you don't even notice it's there. So what we're going to do is we're going to light it up and we're going to make it kind of an important part of the site. Yeah. So I believe the War Memorial was kind of the big concern.
Spare clocks.
And spare clocks, yes, spare clocks. So the spare clocks, there is 2 more clocks in the warehouse that are kind of, we don't plan to reuse. So I'm sure the kind of owner would be open to kind of reusing those as well. And even it's a great suggestion to kind of have them stationary at the Halifax explosion timeline. So I'm sure that would be something that the client would be more than open to.
Okay, there was a question about parking in the building.
Yeah, I mean, parking in the building, we have about 64 parking spots, 2 levels of underground, as mentioned. And we're really relying on the fact that it's right next to the ferry terminal. It is really a walkable city. I think that is something that we are transitioning to. So, you know, parking, I think you can look at it 2 different ways. So for us, I think people who are going to occupy those buildings are really going to be walking kind of everywhere. They're going to be cycling. We're going to rely on public transit. That's the kind of demographic of the proposal.
the basement in the old post office?
Yes. So the old post office is actually going to be a commercial unit in the basement, and it's just going to be a different program. So whatever will be going in there will not need a ton of light. It's gonna, the HVAC system is all getting redone. So there won't be this idea of this kind of dusty kind of stationary air in there. It's a completely new building on the inside. Like the lady said, it is really just the shell that's left. And the reason it's like that is because the old post office had a wood floor frame, so combustible construction. So to make this code compliant for the building code, we had to kind of take out that floor system and replace it with non-combustible construction. So a brand new steel frame structure inside, all concrete floors, and this is part of the development, like pre-planning for this proposed development here.
Thank you. There's two others, just kind of facilitate this a little bit, that I think would be good for you. The patio on the rear roof of the post office, and then the timeline that the developer's looking at.
Yeah. And traffic. Yeah, so the patio on the rear roof, which faces the easement, will face Founders Corners patios as well. So instead of just looking at a blank kind of roof, you're going to have neighbors right across the street. You're going to be able to look at, their gardens or however you want to kind of spin, but that's going to be an occupied roof. So it's going to be much better than looking at a mechanical roof, for instance. So that might be a positive.
Okay. What about the timeline?
The timeline, depending on how this proceeds, I think we would probably be looking at, I think it's around 2.5 years of construction, maybe something in that area. We're still working out the kind of the schedule itself, but we would be hoping to get into the deconstruction of the annex as soon as this, like if this passes, for instance, and then really starting to work on the underground parking, kind of the excavation of the underground parking. And so what we would do is we would probably work with the community and really kind of focus some of that kind of scheduling based on, for instance, the restaurant patio season, for instance. We would try and do a lot of that kind of excavation during the winter months or the fall months kind of thing after the patio season. That is something we'd kind of try and work with the neighboring community.
Okay. I think that was everything that is a fit for you. The floors.
It's about 26 floors, right? Depending on how you count it. It's 00 or 01. So it's 26 floors at 90 meters, and that math kind of works out.
Slate?
A lot of questions. The paralytic slate, I haven't, that's the contractor's responsibility. So I don't know too much about kind of the headache of that.
Okay. I think we'll set that one to staff because now the next part is staff. We do the same thing if they want to come forward. Actually, we close the public hearing first. So thank you.
Perfect. No problem.
Would someone like to move? We close the public hearing. Move. All those in favor? Aye. All right. So now staff can come forward and respond to anything that they wish from the presentation. I think we definitely want to hear about traffic if we can.
Sure. So essentially, the traffic impact study didn't identify any major concerns with the additional number of units. I know there was some concerns about Ochterlony Street that would kind of be outside of the scope of this development in particular, but I think that would be something. That's not to say that if there was all of a sudden a significant issues, that's not another item that our traffic analysts would assess at that time.
Okay, so questions or clarification for members of council for staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Elizabeth, can you, for folks in the audience, kind of explain traffic study? What does that mean? What are the, how do they model? How does that work? Because people are concerned. You're hearing, we're talking about possibly 120 units, 56 parking spots or thereabouts. So they're seeing more traffic. So to explain how the traffic study works for them so they understand where staff can make that recommendation, who does the traffic study, and so on.
Sure. So through the chair to the councillor, the traffic impact studies basically just show modeling during peak hours of the day to show just using modeling the estimated number of vehicles that would be estimated to be going through at that time. And again, that is completed by traffic engineers that are trained in developing these models. And again, there wasn't anything of note really from that peak timeframes.
And could you speak to construction mitigation, how that works on a construction site? So, you know, there've been lots of construction on this site already because of the post office and all good work, but another 2.5 years of construction, how do they manage that to try to, you know, lessen the impact on the people that live in the community?
Of course. And through the chair to the councillor, a lot of the issues that have been noted in the public hearing would be addressed through the construction mitigation plan. So once that development agreement is registered on the property, a major component is the construction mitigation plan, where the applicant will be required to work with the neighboring property owners. There'll be an engagement a significant engagement process that they will have to undertake with all the neighboring properties. I know that the applicant has already started to establish some of those relationships already, and that would be looking at noise, dust, and any impacts from the construction.
And last question, if I may, are you aware of any slate that's on that site? You may not be, that's fine if you don't, but I'm sure.
Through the chair to the councillor, I haven't been made aware of that to this point, no.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mancini. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few questions. I'm going to just throw them out and just be helpful. I would like to know a little more on a traffic study, if it does include the on-street parking element. That's been raised before, and it certainly has come up in other developments. There's no reason to think that it wouldn't be a concern to these folks as well, as stated. I would also like to know, hear a little more what was presented by a member of the audience, of the public, what the full extent of the clarity on heritage property being only the facade, and what's potentially inside. The last is, could you comment on whether or not there has been any piece of inclusionary zoning discussed and or landed, and similarly density bonus on this fund, on this particular project? Thank you.
Sure. Through the chair to the councillor, the first question in regards to on-street parking, I did have quite a few discussion with our parking analyst staff, and they do review all of these development agreements, and they didn't identify, like I asked if there would be any necessity to modify the current on-street parking in any way, and there wasn't anything identified. So again, we would have to rely on, if there did happen to be an issue that might, after the building has already been constructed, that would be the time that we would have to kind of reassess. But again, the traffic impact study didn't flag anything there. In terms of the heritage building, so the registration applies only to the exterior of the building. And we identify character-defining elements that we view as needing to be retained in order for that heritage value to be retained. Obviously, understanding the fact that for a lot of the interiors, as Darren mentioned, like it was wood frame construction, it would be combustible. It doesn't necessarily meet building code. So we understand there has to be some flexibility and compromise in that sense, just as long as the exterior of that building has been retained and those character defining elements that bring that heritage value are retained as well. In terms of the bonus density, that is a component of the policy CHR 7. So all heritage development agreements would have to have the inclusionary zoning incorporated. So for this, 90% of that goes towards the heritage building itself. So when I was talking about—
Sorry, Elizabeth, just you mean density bonusing, right?
Yes, density
Yes.
bonusing. My apologies. Where was I now?
The amount of the fund being 90%.
Yes. Okay, so the 90% goes towards the conservation efforts for the heritage building, and then 10% goes towards that affordable housing fund that we have.
Can I ask for clarity on that answer?
Sure.
90% goes to what again?
The conservation of the exterior of the heritage building.
So if the density bonus fund was paid by the developer, we're giving it back so he can restore the building? Is that how that always works?
Through the chair to the counselor.
Sorry, I didn't know that it goes back to that.
Oh,
I mean, I
so,
knew it goes into something, but I didn't know it was specific to like the potentially the project. Okay.
sure, yeah, so the density bonusing is an amount that's calculated based on the amount of square footage of the new building, so anything above 2,000 square feet, and that's what we
Okay.
use to calculate it.
Gotcha.
It's not our money, it's what they would be required to pay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no other questions of clarification. Councillor Mancini, I'm going to ask you to take the chair since we're about to go into debate. And I'd like to put the motion forward and.
Just stay where you are.
Okay.
We're almost done.
Okay.
Councillor, would you like to put the motion on the floor?
I would.
Thank you. I move that Harbour East Marine Drive approve the proposed development agreement, which shall be substantially of the same form as set out in Attachment A of the supplementary report dated March 19th, 2024. And 2, require that the proposed development agreement be signed by the property owner within 120 days or any extension thereof granted by council on request of the property owner from the date of final approval by council and any other bodies as necessary, including the applicable appeal periods, whichever is later. Otherwise, the approval will be void and obligations arising here under actually shall be at an end. Yeah.
Second by Councillor Kent. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. And thank you everyone for coming out tonight and offering your feedback on this development. I'm going to say right off the front that I support this development. It's one of the best ones, in my opinion, that I think I've seen in 7 years on council. When I put forward that motion, what was it, 2-3 years ago, to register the post office as a heritage building. What I thought we might get one day would be some developer coming in, turning the post office into a facade, building on top of it, and probably jutting their building out towards the street level, because that post office has a large section of private property right in front of it that functions as additional public space. And so I figured, well, we'll probably get to save the facade of that post office, but they'll build something on top of it and they'll fill up as much of the space as they can going along Queen Street. And what instead has come back is one of the most thoughtful design solutions I've seen in a long, long time, where the post office is being left as it is. It gets to not have something built on top of it. It gets to be itself, basically forever, for future generations. And along Queen Street, we're getting this large setback that's matching the post office line. And both of those are tremendous, design pieces for the whole community that's coming out of this project. We do need folks living in downtown, right? When we have more people downtown, that's why it's a lot of the things we all love that are happening in downtown, the restaurants, the stores, the kind of bounce back of downtown Dartmouth has come because we have more people living there in Lotus Point, in Founders Corner, originally Admiralty Place going way back is one of the first ones. King's Wharf, right? This is why we have a downtown that is now becoming this really gem of a place and has become so much more interesting. It's because we have these folks downtown. And this project will do more of the same. Parking will be a challenge, right? Those ratios, there will be people that will be parking on the street as a result of this project. And, it's a challenge of the places in the world where parking isn't a challenge are the places where no one wants to be, right? It tends to be one of these things, the more you kind of throw at parking, the less attractive your place becomes and vice versa. And so it's always a tension. The most successful places, like if anytime you travel, the places that you find where they're hardest to park in are the places that everyone wants to be. And making downtown Dartmouth the place that everyone wants to be, I think is the better objective to be had out of here. Certainly our parking enforcement is, I think it was Rick mentioned, they will be busy in downtown Dartmouth going forward as we have more and more projects taking out of the ground there. But it is also the place where, if you think about, well, where does development make sense? We know from the StatsCan data, a building in downtown Dartmouth will have people taking the ferry, taking the bus, walking to where they go. Not for every trip, right? But we'll have, 50% of people doing that versus a development out in Councillor Purdy's area where all 95% of trips will instead be in cars coming into where? Into downtown Dartmouth and into other places of the municipality. So this project, I think, is going to be really good for downtown Dartmouth. I think the design is solid and the heritage piece is a beautiful restoration, and I couldn't be more enthusiastic. I really do believe this is the only one in town I can think of that's comparable in terms of quality is probably the St. Joseph's over there and the Hydrostone. I think this is going to be one that everyone's going to look at. It'll probably win awards. So I very much encourage council to vote for this one. This is really good work.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. Councillor Kent, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And with council's indulgence, I want to recognize the importance of another heritage moment. With the 100th anniversary of the Royal Canadian Air Force, we have the pleasure of having retired commander of 12 Wing Shearwater, Colonel Al Blair here. And so we just want to acknowledge and thank you for your service and thank you for your contribution to that extraordinary milestone. It was always a pleasure to work with you, Al. So before I go any further, I would like to acknowledge as well that I am absolutely in favor of this development agreement. What has struck me, and I think Councillor Austin has certainly said some of this as well, but I'm so happy to see that we not only are utilizing a vacant property that has been one of the things that I think was often referenced in the past about downtown Dartmouth. It seemed like things were closing down and buildings were disappearing and such. And to see that it at the same time, this project will protect and honor that iconic space of the Heritage Post Office. That approach is unusual, and it's worth noting. That I'm so happy to hear about the way that the clocks actually are being utilized. I think that I love the approach where it's on the level of the people, and I think that is a much more appropriate place than this sort of the clock tower. I can appreciate the clock tower in its original form, but to have the opportunity now to bring it down to this level where every day people can really enjoy it and be reminded really of the tower and be reminded of the history. The War Memorial, I appreciate as well that, first of all, Mr. Clerk for raising the concern and the idea, and then having the response we did from this developer's representative. Certainly that's promising, and I appreciate it. And we're gonna I'm going to encourage you to keep on, Councillor Austin, make sure that gets see that can get moved along as well with staff. I just think it's the right thing to do right now. And I'm going to go back to that point of what downtown Dartmouth used to be. It was vibrant, and then it had taken a downturn. And certainly in my lifetime, we've seen this blossoming space over the course of time, and this to me is the right direction. We often joke about the dark side and the Halifax being this place that everybody wants to go, and they would look at the Dartmouth side, and us Dartmouth councillors, and including Councillor McCluskey when she was doing these roles, we were always sort of pushing that. I think that this is a change maker. That what's going to be happening in the downtown is a change maker for people to want to visit the area as a destination and as a place to live and play, and the whole piece. So I'm happy to support this and see what happens in the future as well in the rest of downtown Dartmouth. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hesby.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. The dark side. Well, I always remind people that the sun rises in the east, so it's always a bright side. And when the sun sets in the west, you're going to see a more beautiful skyline of Dartmouth from the Halifax side. But in regards to this, some of the issues I raised during the Heritage Advisory Committee was about the War Memorial. I even suggested if it was to be a situation, perhaps you could relocate it to the Sullivan's Pond cenotaph site as an option. But I'm glad that they're going to try and incorporate it on site where it is. The other issues we talked about was the open space that you talked about, the front, the public property or private property on the sidewalk. I think it's going to become a very public area. And the only thing I was worried about was the congestion of bicycles and scooters and everything else like that. So I'm hoping that they're going to have some kind of asset management on site because, these become more popular. I think this is going to be one of those spots where you're going to see a lot of them. The other issue was talking about parking was perhaps as an opportunity that the developer look at talking with car share and have a car share outlet there. The people in the building could share a car instead of having to have their own vehicle. So hopefully that could be something to be discussed in the future. Plus charging stations and everything else like that is important for us to look in the future. With the building concept, I was quite impressed with the different presentations as Councilor Mancini said about the different floor ratios of how it could be stacked and presented. I think they did take a very constructive and creative way of providing this layout, and I think it minimizes the impact of shadowing on the neighboring properties, but also, in my opinion, adds a beacon to the Dartmouth skyline, and I think that's what I'm looking forward to see when that gets built, the pinnacle and that stuff. It'd be nice to see. In regards to spare clocks, possibility could we put one there in the north end of Dartmouth by our explosion cannon site is a possibility for one of them. The other one could hang in the lobby here. We have some open space here in the pedway or in the lobby of this building here. Perhaps it might be a spot to have it working here. So it'd be kind of nice to utilize those assets and have them stored away. So I'm looking forward to this development. I'm full support of it as I was at Heritage Advisory. I'll support it here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Purdy?
Thank you. I also just wanted to chime in, one for the residents who spoke and just the concern about the on-street parking, and that is going to become more and more of an issue. And I do have a concern about not having parking ratios needed in development agreements. So yeah, at least we have, I heard, good compliance staff who are working hard to get those cars addressed where they're not supposed to be. But I also wanted to say too that this is probably the most beautiful development I've seen as well. It's a beautiful development. I love how the heritage of the post office is kept and honored, and the setback, and just all the little attention to detail. So it seems like this will be a good neighbor to people who live there in many ways, even though there's going to be some headaches, of course, with density and cars on the streets. That this is something that we're going to have to figure out how to address more effectively or efficiently. But okay, that's all I want to say. I'm in favor of this.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll go to Councillor. You want to close? Councillor Hesby, go ahead.
Yeah, there was one comment I forgot to mention. We talked about the Heritage Advisory about what I call the pit going down into the lower townhouses and stuff. We have steps going down. My only concern though is for the visually impaired. I'm hoping we're going to have some tactile surfaces there to alert anybody that there is steps going down, that you could fall down that pit. It's nice to have them as a theater seating area, but I think it also got to be careful those who may be visually impaired walking along there, that there might be something to worry about. So hopefully that's taken into account. Thank you.
Councillor Austin to close.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. There's actually a small correction. I read the wrong date. It's the staff report. If we could just change that to February 23rd, 2024, whoever's second maybe could consider that friendly. Okay, so we've got the right date on it now. I was also inspired just with some of the discussion there. With the clock tower, right? Paul and I talked several times about the tower over the last number of months, and I'd find it more compelling to put it back if they didn't do such a darn good job of taking it off. Like when you look at the post office, unless you knew there was a tower there, it doesn't feel like anything's missing because the people who did that work really lined up the lines just so. And, that tower is a huge, like to put that up would be a massive undertaking and expense. And, I think the resources are better put into the public spaces, right? To the other aspects of the development. I think the developer we should acknowledge that, some developers in town would sit on the heritage piece, waiting to see if they got approval. That's not what these guys did. They immediately started working without any approval in the bank, spending, big bucks to disassemble the post office and do that restoration work, not knowing whether or not they were going to get an approval. And I think that's there's something commendable in that. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the housing piece. I almost forgot about it in my notes there that Jeremy brought up about inclusionary zoning and affordable housing, density bonusing, and Bill 329. Bill 329 did go through, and so we continue to be really limited as a municipality towards collecting money rather than requiring units, because we're basically kind of stymied by that provincial legislation for the next 2 years in terms of what we can and can't do on that. So we can do the density bonusing, and for most projects, density bonusing is housing, but when there's, big heritage restoration as there is in this one, that density bonusing goes to heritage, because I think it's just heritage and housing that are the two pieces that you can send money to out of that. So that's where that is. And so that's all I have, Mr. Vice Chair. So I think I'd call for the question.
The question has been called for. All those in favor of the motion that's on the floor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you to staff and the applicant very much. I hand back the chair to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, for doing that for me. And so now we'll move on to correspondence. Mr. Clerk, do we have any correspondence that wasn't related to these two matters?
Thank you, Chair. No correspondence was circulated for items 10.1.1 and 10.1.2, and all pieces of correspondence have been circulated to members of the Community Council.
Thank you. Do we have any petitions from anyone on council tonight? Nope. Okay. Presentations, we have that deferred. So public participation. There's another chance you could speak to us just on any matter that you wish tonight. It's the same as the public hearing. You get 5 minutes. It's not a back and forth. Would anyone like to speak to us about something else tonight? The hockey game. Second call. Would anyone like to speak to us tonight about some other municipal matters? It can be about anything, yes. Municipally related, not the hockey game. As name and community just for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Hi, I'm Ann DeRoche, and out in the Gateway area, out off the number 7 in Trish Purdy's. And my concern is the number 7. I know Trish and David's probably working on it, that center lane going out and the traffic and that. I was just wondering where the timeline, like, for that. I live in the trailer park there, and the said lights that it doesn't have the center, and it is getting busier. So that's my just kind of an answer, or
They
just
can,
kind of
probably
an
if you
idea.
stick around, they can give you an answer after. It's not a back and forth. Yeah.
We're working on it.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to us tonight about anything else? Yes, please come forward. Name and community for the record.
Sorry. My name is Cataline Olson, and I'm actually just inquiring what is taking place on the corner of Albro Lake Road and Wise Road. It appears that there would have been a restaurant there that was pulled down. And there appears to be signage on the fenced-in property. And I'm just wondering if there's going to be a hearing about the construction that is going to be taking place there.
I'll follow up with you once we're done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to present anything to council tonight? Would anybody else like to present tonight? Third and final call. All right, thank you, everybody. So information items brought forward, we have none. We have 14, no reports. 15, there's no motions. No notices of motion is coming later. We've done the in-camera. 17 added items, we have none. 18 notices of motion. Councillor Hensby.
Take notice at a future meeting of the Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council, I intend to move a motion to rescind item 11.3.2 from the June 7, 2018 Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council, which requests staff report as follows: that the Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council requests a staff recommendation on responsible cat ownership programming.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. So the date of our next meeting is June 12th, 2024. What do we have June and May here? Oh,
Sorry, that's
yeah, okay. So the date of our next meeting is in fact June 12th, 2024. So we'll see you next month. I would take a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Kent. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.